But for comparison, let's see how reasonable it sounds when we describe the universe creating itself out of nothing and humans arriving here like it is taught in many schools and believed today. Ready? See how reasonable this sounds. Once upon a time, there was no time. There was no space. There was no anything. There was nothing. And during that time, there was a singularity. This is an event that only occurs once. That event was an explosion of something from the nothing during the time that didn't exist. The something exploded into space, which wasn't there. This explosion was later called the Big Bang. There was only one or maybe two elements that came from nothing at first, but then that element or elements started turning into other elements. Hydrogen became other elements like neon, argon, and eventually there were others in the universe like potassium and gold and titanium. Those elements flew around and started forming planets and solar systems. Then on one planet, it started to rain. The rain that came from nothing rained on the rocks that came from nothing, and then it turned those rocks into a liquid soup. That soup swirled around and around, and it wasn't alive. But then, all of a sudden, a bolt of lightning zapped the soup, and there was a macromolecule that came alive. Inside that macromolecule was all the genetic information for every plant, animal, and human that would ever live on the earth. All the information that came from nothing started to live and made a macromolecule. Later, that macromolecule turned into various animals that lived in the sea like fish. But later, they were going to get out of the water. So they started developing lungs and working on it so that future generations would one day be able to breathe air. Once the animals could breathe air, they came out of the water and turned into all sorts of plants and animals. One day there was a human. We aren't sure whether something non-human gave birth to a human, or whether a non-human was walking around and suddenly became human, but it happened. This worked through a process called macroevolution, where one kind of animal is supposed to turn into another kind. They did this by developing traits and characteristics they didn't already have, so they could turn into another kind of animal. They did this in order to survive, but it took millions of years. So for millions of years, nothing survived until they finally developed the trait they needed to survive and become another animal. But now humans are here. There's no purpose to anything because we are all just accidents, and it doesn't matter what we do because we are just animals and will die of natural causes, getting run over, or the universe expanding into evaporation. The end.